Rocky Top Insider presents the RTI Lowdown with Bob Baskerville and Chris Lowe.
Welcome. It's time for another episode of the RTI Lowdown, our weekly show here on Rocky Top Insider. I'm Bob Baskerville, joined as always by Chris Lowe of On3 Sports. Chris, you keeping warm, man?
Yes, sir. It's that time of year, right? It's East Tennessee is one of the great things about East Tennessee, Bob, is the change in climate. But I tell you, it gets pretty cold this time of year. It can anyway. So we're right there in one of those cold patches as we speak.
No doubt. Could be worse. I was talking with my sister up in the Midwest, a little further north, and they were toasty -2 degrees this morning. So could always be worse. Don't miss that.
No.
Hey, we appreciate everybody joining us. Got a good show for you today. If you're checking us out on the YouTube channel, the Rocky Top Insider YouTube channel, make sure you like and subscribe. We're also available on podcasts. Maybe you want to check our show out that way. That's perfectly cool by us. We appreciate the support, however you choose to do it. Just make sure you download that podcast so it's part of your library on a regular basis. We really appreciate the support. We love doing the show and hope you're enjoying it too. Got a good show for you today. Let's get to it. This episode, though, first is brought to you by the Tate Insurance Group. If you're in the market for a great locally based insurance professional to help you with your home, car, health, life coverage, all those things, you don't need to look any further. It's the Tate Insurance Group, and we appreciate their partnership with the Lowdown. Quick overview of today's show. A very, very active week for Tennessee football. One prominent assistant coach on Josh Heupel's staff is shown the door by Josh. And then about 48 hours later, an even more prominent assistant coach joins the Vols. We'll discuss the impending start of the Jim Knowles era on Rocky Top and get the perspective of one of the all-time greats when it came to playing defense at Tennessee, when VFL Kevin Burnett joins the program later. Vol football schedule for 2026 was also released. We kind of knew who we were playing in the SEC, but now we know the dates and everything else. We'll take a look at that and contemplate the pros and cons of the schedule. And then Tennessee basketball. It's about to resume action. They've been off for a little while. They've got a biggie on Tuesday night with current nationally ranked number 11 Louisville coming to town on Tuesday. We'll preview what is a very, very critical game for Rick Barnes and the boys. But first, again, let's say hello to Chris Lowe. Chris, you've been working on a lot of stuff, all this coaching stuff that's been moving around, the big story at Michigan, et cetera. It's been a hectic week, but how you doing?
I'm doing great. I always look forward to Sunday, though, Bob, and catching up with you and talking Tennessee and everything about Tennessee and all the things that potentially may intersect with Tennessee athletics. We talked last week. This firing circle has really been, to me, about as chaotic as I can ever remember. And then it's like, hold my beer. Here comes Michigan and Sharon Moore. Lots been said about what happened there. I feel horrible for the families involved. I feel sorry for his family. All the different families are involved in this awful deal. And clearly Michigan's looking for a new head football coach. And just think about the brands, this cycle, the brands, Bob, that have hired or fired football coaches. Michigan's looking for one. Penn State just hired Matt Campbell last week. Florida hired a new football coach. Auburn hired a new football coach. And you go on and on and on. And just even within the conference, the SEC, there's been a lot. Kentucky with a new football coach. So I don't remember anything quite like this. I think a lot of it is the era that we're in right now with all the changes with the NIL and the portal, fans, donors, ADs, probably less patience than ever. That, if we're going to spend this kind of cash on players, and coaches are making this kind of cash, because let's be honest, people jump on the players for moving around. Well, there's been a lot of coach movement too. And I don't want to hear, I don't know about you, I don't want to hear any more fans jumping on players for not being committed to football teams when leading up to the playoff, I think just about every team, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3, has a head coach or a coordinator who is taking a job elsewhere, who's going to be juggling duties leading up to their most important football game of the year. I understand the calendar stinks, and there's not a lot you can do about it right now. But still, it's the players aren't the only ones moving around, man. It's the coaches too. So we'll see what happens at Michigan. Kalen DeBoer coming out tonight and saying that he's not interested in any other jobs. His interest is Alabama in the playoff, and he's happy at Alabama. They are continuing to work on a contract extension there for him. Nothing's been agreed upon. Nothing's been signed. And I know enough about this world, and you do too, until the ink is dried with these type of things. Nothing is ever completely 100% done.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. So a lot going on. Also, a tip of the hat to the latest Heisman Trophy winner, Fernando Mendoza from Indiana University. Really seemed like a well-deserving recipient of that award. His acceptance speech just was outstanding. I got to believe the Downtown Athletic Club, or whoever the organizers still are for the Heisman Trophy, have to feel like they got the right guy in there. The voters made the right choice, because today it sounds like Diego Pavia, a little bit of sour grapes last night after not winning. A lot of things not suitable for workplace to be said that he said to the voters, to Indiana. Feel bad for Vanderbilt in that regard, because he's representing their university too. But Mendoza, back to him, really, that's the story. What a great kid, great representative of the Big Ten and Indiana University. And that kid's gonna, even if it's not football, he's gonna probably do something special once he's grown up and out of school.
Yeah, to me, Fernando sort of epitomizes that whole story, the Indiana story. You go back and look at his recruitment out of high school, Bob. He was a 3-star kid. I think Yale was interested, and nobody certainly at that point saw him being a Heisman Trophy finalist, certainly not the winner or a guy that's going to be drafted in the first round of the NFL draft. And yet here he is. This is the 4th straight year. I find interesting that the winner of the Heisman Trophy is a transfer. I think that's right. And again, that sort of crystallizes where we are now in college football. People move around. It's so much is contingent upon a team being able to work the portal and get the right people out of the portal. And certainly when you look at Indiana, Bob, Mendoza is one of many on that team. A lot of those guys came with Signetti from James Madison.
Yeah.
And have been star players. Aiden Fisher, their linebacker, great football player. You go up and down that list. And of course, Mendoza comes from Cal and has a huge impact on that team. So I do think in a lot of ways, when you look at Indiana and their rise to the top of the football world right now, that Mendoza in many, many ways epitomizes that program.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. Sign of the times on the whole, 4 consecutive transfers winning the Heisman. I mean, it's our new normal now. Well, let's get to it. On our last show, we spoke for only a minute about the prospects of changes on the Vol football coaching staff. We said that while we expect some changes in the offseason, it was going to, of course, be up to Josh Heupel. And we felt like, we're confident that he'll do what's necessary to move this program forward, whatever that may be. Well, on Monday, Josh Heupel did just that. He relieved defensive coordinator Tim Banks of his duties at Tennessee. And while many, many fans breathed a sigh of relief, the truth is that the next step, which was replacing a critical defensive coordinator position and upgrading it to boot, isn't necessarily as easy as it may seem. I mean, Chris, I know a lot of names started coming up immediately. I was hearing people saying, bring me Will Muschamp. And certainly the guy we ended up getting, his name came up, and another one with Ryan Walters. But I wanted to really emphasize that, this time of year, it was critical when you make a move like that. First of all, it showed me something with Josh, because I think Josh really sent a message that he understands the gravity of the situation. The situation with the defense wasn't good enough. And he saw that too. And also to make a change and get it in place before the transfer portal opens on January 2nd, I believe. I just felt that I was surprised it happened as quickly as it did. I wasn't surprised it happened, but maybe the timing surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, I think he had zeroed in. I think Knowles was his guy, and there were other people that are you're always going to sort of cast a little bit of a net. The smart ones do, and Josh is. But I think the Knowles and timing is everything when you start hiring coaches, Bob. Jim Knowles needed a job. He was out of a job, and it just worked out perfectly for Tennessee that they could go get this thing done pretty quickly. They fired Banks, and I'd heard that Josh wanted to have this done by the end of the week, and he did, to go get a Jim Knowles. And I think there's going to be more changes coming. You don't bring in a guy like Jim Knowles, who's been a veteran, who's been a head coach, he's run his own shop before, without giving him a chance to hire some of his guys too.
Yep.
I think it's really unfair to any coordinator, offense or defense, to bring that person in, and they have to come in and work. I don't care who your staff is, whether they're great, whether they're average or whatever, work with the guys that they come in with. You want to bring in your people, and at least a couple. And I think with this hire, Jim was told he'll have a couple of hires. So I think you're going to see some more changes on that defensive staff. I mean, Anthony Poindexter's a guy who coached on the back end at Penn State, safeties, was a great football player at Virginia. I think he's a guy that you may see at some point pop up on UT staff. But no, Knowles is a guy that has done it at a lot of different places. People ask me all week, they've asked me, what's your assessment? Well, my assessment is this. You got a guy who's a veteran coach who's coached at different schools and different leagues. His MO is he's gone into places with defenses that were struggling, like Tennessee this past year. He did it at Oklahoma State. He did it at Duke. He did it even at Ohio State. I think when he went to Ohio State, they were ranked 60th in the country. And, of course, the national championship year, they had the best defense in college football. So that's, without question, his challenge now at Tennessee. Can he do the same thing? His defenses they're complex. It's one of those things where he's a really good teacher, but to learn his defenses, you got to be able to learn. You got to be able to listen and be a quick learner. And I don't think it's one of those things where anybody, when you look at what he's done over the course of his career, they're not always go from the first year he's there or the year before to being just a juggernaut on defense. Sometimes it takes a few years, Bob. But if you look at him, where he has been lights out at improving defenses over the course of the years. That Oklahoma State defense, I remember talking to Mike Gundy. When he got there, they were horrible. They couldn't stop anybody. And when he left, Ohio State hired him away. They had moved into the top, 10, 15, 20 in the country. Oklahoma State had. And playing with players. I mean, they had good players, but they didn't have the 4 and 5 stars that they did at Ohio State. And yet they played at a really high level there toward the end. And the Ohio State defense, the national championship defense, let's be honest, they were loaded with great football players. And coaches always look better when they have great players. And I think that's the thing now at Tennessee. They've got a guy in that's a proven commodity in Jim Knowles. Now you got to go out and you got to get better. You got to get him more tools to work with in the portal, recruiting. I think Tennessee's recruiting class right now, what they brought in is really good. But you got to really fill in the blanks now, Bob, with what he wants to do, fitting in with what he wants to do, the way he wants to play defense. And I think that's really important going forward. And getting in the guys on staff, whether it's 2 or 3 or whatever, that sort of complete his coaching staff.
Yeah, well put. I think that because we heard a lot about this on the radio too. Of course he was going to be good at Ohio State. Look at all the players he had. But I pointed to what you just discussed with us too, and that is the Oklahoma State stint is what caught my eye because again, that era that he was doing it in, first of all, he wasn't going to have the same talent level at Oklahoma State and Stillwater that he had at Ohio State. Also, think about that era when he was at Oklahoma State and the level of offensive firepower in the Big 12, right? I mean, that's the other factor. And the fact that he elevated that defense over the years, that told me a lot. I mean, I thought that was interesting. I felt Knowles was there. I wanted to ask you this question was because we talked about this process moved quickly once it got going.
Mm-hmm.
Banks was out on Monday. On Tuesday, the name that seemed to emerge very quickly, and maybe it was manufactured by the media, I don't know. But boy, there was a lot of smoke around Ryan Walters, right? The current defensive coordinator at Washington, former head coach at Purdue. And it made a lot of sense. First of all, Walters has been highly recognized in a very positive way as a DC, but also he and Josh Heupel go back in time together.
Mm-hmm.
They spent time together at Oklahoma, and I think even Missouri for that matter. And we know how Josh, many times is kind of drawn to the folks that he has a relationship or prior history with. My question to you was, based on what you were hearing from your sources, did that ever really get that far down the road? Because Walters kind of dispelled it, but he kind of gave one of those patented non-answer answers, so to speak. But then that was Tuesday, and then Wednesday, lo and behold, we have Jim Knowles. But I just wanted to spend a second on Walters and get your take. Was that ever like really real?
Coaches are never going to shut the door, man. When you're making, what was he? I think Walters is making 1.5, and Tennessee was paying their coordinator 2.1.
Yeah.
It's as they used to say, it's business.
Yes.
I do think that though, and now that we have sort of the whole picture, that Knowles was the guy that Josh wanted. I don't know where Walters was or what. I think a lot of it was as you just pointed out, the fact that they did cross paths. Ryan has a guy on his staff, his linebackers coach. They played with Josh at Oklahoma. So there were the natural ties, but Knowles was the guy. And again, I think the timing, Walters was on a staff. They were playing in a bowl game. They played last night.
Yeah.
Jim Knowles was out of work, and it was easier. It made more sense. And I think the fact, again, his track record and the fact that he'd done it a lot of different places. Penn State wasn't, listen, they were not very good on defense. They were horrible.
Yeah.
They weren't very good this year. This year was sort of a train wreck for Penn State, period. But coaches always want to challenge themselves with guys maybe from different umbrellas that come in and have had success. And I think this is what you're getting in Jim Knowles. Tennessee is a guy that has done it and knows how he wants to do it. I think he's a very headstrong guy. I always like getting guys. To me, two things when you're formulating your staff. Number one, especially when it comes to young guys, and Jim's not necessarily a young guy. He's my age, and although I still consider myself young, Bob, 60 years old.
Mm-hmm.
You want
just
guys,
a number.
Yeah, I know. You want guys that you think are equipped to be head coaches. Number one, that can be a head coach. I think that's, and I like getting guys. I would like, as a coach, getting guys on my staff who have been head coaches before, who've run their own shops. And when things come up, not necessarily X's and O's or scheme, but how to manage your program with maybe managing a player, personnel, things off the field, on the field. You can go to that coach and say, hey, did you ever have any of these kind of situations when you were coaching? How did you handle it? What do you think? Give me your honest opinion. It's nice to have those guys that have been head coaches on your staff before, and Jim has.
Yeah, no, I think that's what's interesting. There's a lot of kind of floating narratives, right, in this whole situation. I think that's what's kind of interesting here. We've talked about his successes. The thing I keep hearing, and I'm trying to dig deeper on it, but the book on the complexity of his defensive schemes, because there is a pattern that at least in year one, it's more like getting some traction, and maybe your defense is not exactly where you want it to be, but then it's what happens in years 2 and 3. We have certainly a fan base. I don't know, can't speak for the administration, but there's a lot of people who are like, no, we don't have patience. We've got to be better, like, immediately. And I think that's all relative. I think improvement is in the eye of the beholder. If he gets that defense next year to, like, I don't know, top 40 defense, that's tangible improvement over what we saw this past year. We were up near, the 90s, close to 100 in terms of defensive rank. If he can get us to a top 5, top 10 defense by year 3, then that to me is a home run. I just think it's the timeline. And the other thing that it makes me wonder is, for all those folks that think, Josh is, undoubtedly on the hot seat. I wouldn't say that he's not under pressure to win, of course, but I mean, Josh had his eyes wide open when he made this hire. He knows the track record of Knowles and sometimes how long the trajectory is, et cetera. If we know it, you know he does. So I've got some faith in that. And last thing I'll say before I hand it back to you, Chris, is I like the fact that what I said earlier, it feels like Josh a lot of times kind of leverages relationships. And in this case, I mean, certainly he and Jim Knowles probably know each other, but it's not like they were tight and they've run together. You know what I mean? I think that's to me, in my mind, that shows some level of like growth and Josh's ability to pivot a little too.
Yeah, I think so. I think you got to adapt and you got to evolve.
Yeah.
And your players, listen, your players, look here, your offense or defense coordinator, your players have to respond. You've got to be able to get those guys to play instinctively, fast, not think. And I tell you what, I think we can, along those lines, we could go to somebody right now who knows all about playing good defense and what it takes to play good defense. And that's VFL Kevin Burnett, a longtime NFL player, played at Tennessee. He broke me in back in the day when I was covering the team in Nashville, and was a lot of fun to play. One of the original California Pipeline guys, KB, you and Kevin Simon, Casey Clausen, Rick Clausen, man, you guys had that pipeline going on back in the early 2000s.
Man, listen, it's back when us California kids wanted to get away from home, and we wanted to travel and see the world, and we opened that door, and now you got West Coast kids playing all over the map. So it was something kind of a groundbreaking thing, and that 2000 class with DJ Williams going to Miami. Mm-hmm. It was a groundbreaking thing, and now, like I said, you see kids going all over the map, Maine and Connecticut and far up there in the Ivy League schools. So, trailblazers.
That's right. Well, we're glad to have you tonight, KB, and we appreciate you. And it's hard to believe, man. Our paths first crossed over 25 years ago, man. That's just hard for me to believe. Let me ask you this. We were just talking about this when you came on, and you're the perfect person to ask this. Tennessee getting a new DC, Jim Knowles, as a player who played for 10 years in the NFL, all SEC, all American at Tennessee. As a defender, what are you looking for in a coordinator? What is most important, player-coordinator relationship, and that guy getting you guys to play at your highest level?
So I think it's a guy that's not so hung up on the X and O's that you can't go out there and play fast, and somebody who's going to stress and implement the fundamentals to play. And let me give you kind of example for that. Everybody says go out there and play fast, and everybody says, schematically. Good defensive coordinators teach disruption, not necessarily hammer it back or box it back or whatever term you want to use, but they teach, listen, go hit the ball as far and fast as you can, and then everybody else got to come running. Those guys are the guys I tend to see that are more successful versus the guys that, all right, it's got to be this and it's got to be perfect every time. And the perfect example of that was John Chavis. He said, listen, you guys go play as fast as hard as you can, play off of each other. And we had really good defenses during that time. So those type of defenses tend to excel. And one thing I will add into that, coaching against these offenses nowadays, I mean, you got to literally cover all 53 and a half for 70 plays a game, and it's damn near impossible. So, and you have to coach tackling, and that's one thing with the rules and all the limitations there. It's really a challenge. So you got to be creative, and you got to be flexible.
Hey, Kevin, really appreciate you joining us. It's good meeting you. I wanted to get your take on that. You just talked about it too, because boy, we as media and fans, we can sure act like we know the game as well as anybody, players tell us you should go get out on the field once, but I was going to say, watching this past season, it was frustrating as a fan, just specifically as a fan watching what was going on defensively. And you talked about tackling, And I felt like, man, it was kind of crazy to say, but it felt like it was a lost art for our team. But is that something that literally is what has to get coached for some of these younger guys that are coming in, and they've probably been dominant at a high school level, right, where it's easier in some instances? This is a whole new ball game, and like you said, the way the offenses have advanced and everything else. I mean, is that really when I think of defense, I think of just scheme and personnel, but it's also like there's still something to be said for the basics, right?
Correct. And I think that's why I brought it up. And I don't want to take anything away from anybody. You know, I coached high school football. You know, I was a head coach for 4 years until I actually moved away from South Florida. So I understand kind of how hard it is to coach against these modern day offenses. And I understand how hard it is to coach, you know, an offense and a quarterback. It's hard to coach tackling because you may have a guy that's a press, you know, a great defender, a great, you know, one-on-one player, but he just struggles to tackle. And, you know, how do you teach him how to tackle at 18 years old with, you know, 2 or 3 hours a day and 45 minutes of practice time? You just can't.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't. Let's be honest. And then the other part to that is, if he isn't taught it in high school, where else is he going to learn it? So he's only going to learn it in the games. And unfortunately, that is the way of college and pro athletics now. If you look at tackling as a whole across, you know, college and professional sport, it's not optimal. And I won't call it poor. It's just not optimal because you just don't have the time to teach it.
Yeah.
And that's the best way I can put it. And then you know, the other part to it is you got guys like Hype that are running plays every 10 to 12 seconds.
Yeah.
So you literally have to cover all, like I said, all 53 and a half for 70 plays a game is difficult, man. If you don't have disciplined football players, you don't have smart, tough, physical football players, they're gonna find a weak link eventually. And I think that's what happened to us against Alabama. I think that's what happened to us against Vanderbilt.
We're talking with Kevin Burnett, VFL. Kevin was the Tennessee legend a few weeks ago at the SEC Championship game. I wish I could have been there, KB, there in Atlanta. And I tell you what, I covered every play of Kevin's career at Tennessee. And, you know, every school brags about we're RBU or DBU or LBU. But you go back 50, 60, 70 years, and there have been a lot of good linebackers to come through Tennessee. And I'll tell you, Bob, I've seen a lot of those guys live. And KB was right there. In fact, I did something this past, I don't know, right before the season started, the 8 to 10 guys I felt like were the best ever at Tennessee. And there's a ton of guys to pick from. But I think our guest was right there in the middle of that. And the thing I love the most about you, KB, is you could play on every down. You could rush the passer. You could play the run. You could drop in coverage. You could do whatever Chief asked you to do. And that's rare and rare, isn't it, Kevin, that you can find a guy. I'm not asking you to brag on yourself, but a guy who's effective on every single down the way the game's played now.
No, first off, let me say thank you, Chris. That means a lot. You know, one, the depth of our relationship, knowing each other, you know, let's call it 25 years now. And to actually, you know, have you hold true to what you said and actually, you know, put ink and pencil and paper behind what you said, man, it really means a lot. You know, going into the question now, you have to have players now that are, you got to have guys that can play every down, but now they got to be 6'5", 260 and be able to play every down, you know, run like the wind. And I think that, you know, it goes into where we lack on defense a little bit, you know, and it's just not enough for those guys to go around anymore. Like, they don't make players like that anymore. They don't make, you know, the John Henderson and the Albert Haynesworth. You're just not going to be able to get two of those guys on the same team. The closest rendition to that was the two guys that were at Georgia a couple years ago. But you just don't see those type of players like that anymore, and a bunch of good players on the team because of NIL. It's just hard to stack good players on a team. Because it's, you know, I hate to say it's just not enough money to go around, you know, and, you know, let's, you know, it took if you go back and look at that 2001 and that 2014, it took everybody at least 1 year to get on the field. It took me a year to get on the field full time. It took Big Joe a year to get on the field full time. It took Albert a year to get on the field for 1 year full time. So it takes about a year or two to get guys started. And now, with portal guys, you don't know what you're getting. You can't really take a guy out of high school because you like, look, I got to win early. So, listen, I hate it for the coaches now. It's like you're coaching with one hand, in your pocket, and the other hand handcuffed to your belt loop. So, it's a tough environment to coach in, but it takes a lot of creativity. It takes media, and it takes money.
I've been doing a little bit of legwork on you here, Kevin, and I was living and working in Southern California back when you were in high school. And CeeLo, I'm looking here, man. You may know this. I did not. I certainly was familiar with you as a player in college, but the high school stuff, man. 48 carries, 650 yards, 16 touchdowns. Played safety. Tennessee, as I say, you've had a chance, as a lot of these athletes do, to get to play on both sides of the ball, do a lot of other stuff. Obviously, linebacker is where you elevated and became an SEC legend, a professional, all those things. Which position, which side of the ball did you enjoy the most, though?
So my first love was running back. I had my coaches. One of my coaches, when I was in Pop Warner, said, "Look, bro, I know you want to be a running back." And he told me this. I was probably 10, 11 years old. He said, "Listen, bro, you're going to play defensive end or outside linebacker." And he told me this. I was real young at the time. He was like, "Bro, just get used to it." He said, "You're going to be too big to be a running back." And so, all through high school, man, I'm going to be a running back. I'm going to be a running back. And then one day I told him we were getting torched on defense. I was like, "Man, put me back there. I could play defense, right?" That's what I told the coach. He put me back there at safety. And when I say I knock somebody's helmet off, they were like, "All right, you're playing safety from now on." And then it was again another game. We were losing. We were down in the game. They're like, "Look, let me move you to linebacker." And I went to linebacker and just got a couple sacks, blitzing, and there it was. I enjoyed playing football. And I think that was the most important thing. I enjoyed playing football. It was never, about the money. The money was good. The money was great. I've been fortunate to make, enough money to take care of my family. But it was just about the enjoyment of the game, man. Enjoying the game, going out there and playing, whether I'm on offense, whether I'm on defense. I dare to say I played every position on the football field except for right and left tackle. So.
Chris, I got one more for Kevin too. I'm sitting here thinking about it, and you talked about it a moment ago. Imagine Kevin Burnett is, like Phillip Rivers. Apparently, Phillip's out there slinging it around today. But you say you could go back in time, and you were playing in college, and you were playing at the University of Tennessee as a defensive player. I've always wanted to hear this because we always hear kind of points of view on it with Josh's offense, the way it runs, the tempo, how fast they're out on the field, sometimes how quickly they're off the field.
Yeah.
Is that really, it sounds what I've always heard is that you got to really brace for that as a defensive player. Would you agree with that?
So, if I'm scouting Tennessee, the things I'm scouting for is one, hey, we need to get them in space. And two, if we get them with 2 negative plays in a row, that's really where they struggle. So getting on and off of the field, with 46 seconds, that come with the territory. So that's kind of I've complained about both sides, hey, tackling and, offensive efficiency. But then as a defender, you got to rise to the occasion, man. You got to love it, and you got to understand that, you're probably going to get 20 more plays than any other defensive football team in the SEC and or Power 5 college football. Now that, if you're, excuse my language, if you're beating a mess out of people, that works for you. But if you can't score points and you come up short in the red zone, it works against you. And I think as a coaching staff, you have to adjust for those things. Hey, if we're struggling with offensive efficiency, we got to slow down. And again, it's not a complaint, it's an observation. And I know Josh is taking that into account now. So that's why he made the changes. I'm pretty sure we're gonna see, some type of offensive adjustment going forward. But to answer your question, hell yeah, it's a complaint. Hell yeah, it's a complaint. Hey,
Yeah.
Josh, we can't come off the field with 46 seconds. Like there's no way that should happen.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, on the other side of the ball, man, the name of the game is get the effing ball back. Period.
Yeah. Yeah. And the last thing I'll say on that is you brought up a really good point because, again, I'm certainly more novice than you when it comes to this stuff. But it's got to have some impact on the offensive game planning, too. I'm sure that's going to be something Knowles says to Josh, right?
Yeah, 100%, dude. And I didn't mean to call you dude.
No, you're good, man.
We talking. It has to be into account, man. It has to, because we lost football games because of offensive efficiency. If we shorten the game instead of lengthen it, we win a couple of those games. So, and you think about it, all you need is win two more games. You need two more games. So I honestly think, Alabama in any other game that we lost, you take that Alabama game in any other game, dude, we're a top 5 football team playing an SEC championship. So simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look at Georgia, Alabama and Georgia. We beat both of those teams. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Which, and I think that's the thing Josh has done is he's not been able to beat Georgia, but he's sort of gotten over the hump against Florida. He's gotten over the hump against Alabama. One of the things, KB, before we let you get out here, that I get asked all the time when we do these interviews, and we've done tons of them. I love talking to you guys that I've known forever, whether it's you or Jason Swain, Al Wilson, all the guys I've covered, Big Joe. They always say, man, you need to ask them about what they're doing now, where they're living, their families, I know you coach for a while. So just give us a little synopsis of what's going on right now in your life, where you're doing what you're doing.
So, man, I'm actually living in the Dallas area, traveling back and forth right now, caring for my mom. Shoot, man, I got 2 in college right now. I got 1 in high school and 1 in middle school playing volleyball. I was just a couple years ago, like I said, I was coaching, and now looking to probably get into the coaching side of things, either in high school, pro, college, somewhere in there. By trade, a loan officer and a real estate agent. So I kind of dabble in a little bit of everything right now. But I think the main thing is just, embracing the family time, man, because the kids, they grew up really fast. And it's something like one of my coaches said, take care of the things you get one of. You get one body, you get one family, you get one mom, one job. Take care of those things. So that's right now what I'm really focused on doing. Taking care of myself health-wise, and staying in touch with the people that the relationships and the things that mean something to me.
Well, one last story. I got a lot of stories on Kevin, and my favorite though is 04. Auburn beat the stuffing out of Tennessee in Knoxville. 3-4 touchdowns, bad, and that was obviously a great Auburn football team.
Yes,
Ronnie Williams.
Is that Jason Campbell? Was he
Cadillac? Yeah, Cadillac Williams, and they come in and they just boat race Tennessee. I'll never forget sitting there with 2 rows in front of him. Kevin sits up there and he says, "We're not losing again. We will be in the SEC championship game." Everybody's like, "Yeah, right. You guys just got blitzed." Well, guess what? They played in the SEC championship game that year and really outplayed Auburn.
Ooh, we had two 80+ yard touchdowns called back to back.
Right.
I've never.
I was going to say couple penalties, but. People talk about the Tim Tebow promise and calling their shots. I always remember when I think of Kevin, I got a lot of stories, but that's the one. Because the next week they go to Athens and beat I think a number 3 or number 4 Georgia team in Athens and played great football down the stretch and got to the SEC championship game. I think that's the one where Riggs had the long touchdown and put you guys ahead late. And they came back and won, and then they go on to the Cotton Bowl. You guys do, and just blitzed a really good Texas A&M team. So that's my defining memory of Kevin Burnett is calling his shot there early in the season.
Listen, Chris, man, I can't thank you enough for having me. Just thinking of me enough to put me on. Bob, thank you so much for the reliving the high school memories.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Again, let's do it again. Sometime soon. Let's talk about spring ball, something like that, and as things mature. Let's see what happens.
Kevin, thanks, brother. It's good. It's
Thank
good
you.
catching up. Love to your family. We'll catch up soon. All right.
Absolutely appreciate it, brother.
All right,
Happy
man.
holidays, man. Thank you.
Same to you.
That was great. Kevin was one of those guys, man. He was a go-to. I guess in the media, we probably shouldn't admit this. He was a go-to quote for me, man. If I needed to get something, good stuff, I would always go to KB because I knew he was going to be Mr. Quotable, and he was going to tell you the way he felt. And he didn't care if he stepped on toes or if he said something that might, be a little bit not inflammatory, but might be a little bit sort of cocky.
Yeah.
That was him. And he was a lot of fun to cover. And you go back to that run of defenders they had.
Yeah.
When he mentioned John Henderson, he mentioned Albert Hainsworth and Kevin Simon and him. And then you go back into the late 90s, the Sean Ellis's of the world. Of course, Al Wilson. I mean, from 97 to 2004. And of course, there's a time we go in forever and I'll leave guys out. And the thing that sticks out to me about those defenses, Bob, is they got these kids from all over the country, the Carolinas, California, Mississippi, Paris Harrelson, New Orleans. Albert was from South Carolina. John obviously was from Tennessee. But they went all over the country and got, great football players during that time. And certainly Kevin Burnett was, in my mind, certainly in my time, was as well-rounded a linebacker as you're going to find, which, hey, the guy played 10 years in the NFL.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's what a good dude. I mean, it cracks me up. He called me dude and then apologized. I was like, hey, man, we're just talking. That's what's great about this show. So we can the stories. And I appreciate what you just asked him, CeeLo, about what's he up to and stuff, because sometimes we got to remember that's what some of these folks want to hear is just the stories too. And the fact that you hearken back to something else, you just saw the big smile on Kevin's face. So that was fun, man. Appreciate him hopping on with us. All right, let's move on. But before we do that, let's talk for a moment about our sponsor. And that's the Tate Insurance Group. Tate Insurance Group is your local insurance team, and they are proud to call East Tennessee home. Just like our Vols, they know what it takes to overcome obstacles, to give their all and show true volunteer spirit for our community. Whether it's home and auto or business coverage, they provide personal service that you can count on. And again, they care about what you care about because this is where they live too. Tate Insurance Group, local, trusted, always in your corner, right here at home. We really appreciate them being a part of the show and supporting the Lowdown. All right. Now that was good. Let's talk for just a minute before we get to basketball, Chris, about the 2026 Tennessee football schedule.
Right.
That came out. Again, we kind of knew who we were playing, but now it's been calendarized, so to speak. Now we don't know whether they're day games or night games, et cetera, but now we know what the order is going to be specifically for those conference games. And I found it kind of interesting. I'll just rattle off these first 6 games before we hit our 7th game of the season, which is against Alabama when they come to Knoxville in 2026. So we open up the season against Furman. You would think that's a win. We open up in Atlanta, or next up is in Atlanta against Georgia Tech. I think Chris will probably be favored in that game just because Georgia Tech, good team this year, man, but Haynes King is such a integral part to that team and he's going to be gone. So I do think that that's a game though that's, cannot take for granted. Even if Tennessee's favored, that could be a tough one at Bobby Dodd. Then Kennesaw State got some Vol ties there with Jerry Mack, their head coach. And then we go into conference, 2 home games to kick off conference play. Against Texas and then Auburn. So you've got the prospect of Arch Manning coming in and then the prospect of Alex Golish and Tim Banks together. Banks now the safeties coach or defensive backs coach at Auburn. And then Arkansas and Fayetteville. Now, I don't want to sound too sheepy here, Chris, but that's 6 games. And I mean, Texas, of course, is going to be super tough. I think the prospect of Tennessee maybe being, I don't know, 6-0 seems like total sheep mode, but 5-1, very possible. 4-2, I think possible too. But I feel like I feel fortunate that Tennessee's got a couple home games against tough competition, but to kind of get the pump primed for that SEC play.
Bob, did you not learn anything about the schedule this year, man? I looked at Tennessee's schedule before this season, and hey, I'm raising my hand. I was guilty. I said they've got one of the easier schedules in the SEC. Missouri, Tennessee. There was one other school that I had in that same group, but Tennessee got a little bit of a break this year, I thought.
Yeah.
And the one thing I've learned, and I do the same thing you do, man. I go down and I count losses, wins. Schedules in November and October look a whole hell of a lot different than they look in July and August, man. And case in point, who thought Vanderbilt would be a 10-win football team this year?
Yeah, and I mean,
with the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy.
Yep.
Who thought that Florida would just fall apart and Tennessee would go to the swamp at a place that has been a horror chamber for them and just beat them down? So I'm always like, here's what I will say. The big difference next year in the schedule, not just for Tennessee, is one bye week.
Yeah.
That to me, in a 9-game league schedule, and you've got one bye week, there are going to be a lot. And Tennessee's 8-4 this year. Okay. Texas was 9-3. Nobody in Austin is jumping up and down about a 9-3 record. Certainly nobody in Knoxville is jumping up and down about an 8-4 record. Well, guess what? You better get used to it, because with 9 league games and one bye, there are going to be a lot of pretty good 8-4, 9-3 football teams walking around. And that's going to make it a lot harder for teams in this league.
No, I agree. And that's kind of my point is, in that first half of the season that we ran through, they need to make some hay there. And it's not easy by any stretch, because the back half, we mentioned the 17th of October, Alabama comes to Knoxville, followed by a road trip to Columbia against South Carolina. Lenora Sellers announced he's staying for another season, so that makes that game a little harder at face value. And then the bye week comes on Halloween weekend. By the way, South Carolina is coming off of a bye week when they play us. We'll be coming off the Alabama game, which I don't love that. And then after our bye week, we play Kentucky. And then, as our colleague at our Rocky Top Insider noted, then we travel to College Station against Texas A&M. And his point was, Shump was saying it'd be great if we were coming off the bye week going to A&M, a little more rested versus having a game in front of that, even if it is Kentucky. Right. And then we wrap up the last home game of the season in November, Lane Kiffin and LSU. LSU rolls into town for senior day, so that should be interesting. And then we wrap up against Vanderbilt. So yes, to your point, I mean, realistically, we could be looking at another 8-4 season. I mean,
it looks harder now. This one, honestly, and I mean, it may be the reverse from last year. This schedule looks harder to me now than last year's did at this time.
I agree.
But it may not be. I mean, Georgia Tech, I think 3 things. You're playing at Bobby Dodd and not in Mercedes-Benz. That's all. Georgia Tech's a really good football team. They're hard to beat at home. They are. Brent Key is a really good coach, and you're right. Haynes King was a big part of that team, but he's built a pretty good program there. That's a harder game than playing Syracuse in Atlanta. Syracuse was awful this year.
Yeah,
the game was in Atlanta. That is a hard. So if you match up the non-conference games, I think Tennessee's got a tougher challenge next year. And I don't think Tennessee's going to lose to Kennesaw State, but you can't just roll the football out there.
Sure.
And then the last 3 games, 2 road games at A&M, home against LSU. And Bob, I don't want you sneaking any mustard bottles in your jacket for that game to throw it Lane on the sideline. But then you go 2 Vandy. So you got 2 of your last 3 on the road. And again, I think I can't emphasize enough. And this is not just for Tennessee, but boy, depth and development of younger players and staying healthy next year will be more important than ever.
Hey, the mustard will blend in with the gold.
That's right. The the LSU colors.
You'll never know. You'll never know.
Or range golf balls. I'll never
Yeah,
forget
exactly.
being with him after the game, and he holds it up. He goes, at least they were smart enough to throw a range ball and not a brand new Pro V1.
That's funny. Yeah, so I'm with you. I mean, I still stand by what I was saying, that I feel like if they're going to go into the kind of the fire of conference play, Texas coming to Knoxville is by no means an easy game, but I'd rather be playing Texas in Neyland than down in Austin.
Yeah.
So
Well, they got to make some hay in the first half of the season. I agree with you. They need to make some hay and not be having to swim upstream those last 3 or 4 games.
No doubt. No doubt. All right, let's jump to some basketball before we wrap up today's show. The Tennessee Vols had some off time. They've been off for, well, by the time they play their next game, they'll have been off almost, I think it was almost 10 days. But their reward for that break is an enormous matchup as the high-octane Louisville Cardinals roll into Thompson Bowling Arena at Food City Center, again, Tuesday evening, 7 p.m. The Cards are currently ranked number 11. I think they might move up in the next AP poll, which doesn't release until Monday. They're 9-1 in Pat Kelsey's second season. Impressive wins over good schools, Cincinnati, Kentucky, Indiana. Most recently, this was just on Saturday, a blowout win over Memphis. Their only losses come to Arkansas, and we've watched Arkansas, and we've seen enough of them now to know Arkansas is going to be pretty good this year under Calipari. Chris, here's a couple metrics I want to share with you. I mean, U of L's ranked 10th in KenPom. They are second overall in offensive efficiency. They are 34th in defensive efficiency. They're also 11th ranked in the net. They currently average 94 points a game. That's 7th best nationally. Here's where it gets interesting. They average 13 made 3-point field goals per game, which is 3rd nationally. They rank 9th nationally in rebounding, 11th nationally in assists. They are the personification of how the 5-out offense that they talk about, how that can work, because they are as good as it gets when it comes to floor spacing. And my case in point, and I want to get your thoughts on this, is against Memphis on Saturday, Louisville made 18 3-pointers. They were 18 of 35 from 3-point range. By the way, they only shot 54 field goal attempts in the game. So very 3-point heavy, and also had 24 assists on 30 made field goals. So super efficient. Long story short, Chris, this is a very, very good team rolling into Knoxville.
I think the best team they play. Houston was certainly a good basketball team, and Tennessee beat them.
Yeah.
A couple intriguing things to me about this game is it's the first time we've seen Tennessee play at home this year against a really good opponent. You know, the other games they played against good teams have either been on the road or at a neutral site. So I want to see how Tennessee responds at home. And Tennessee's been great at home under Rick Barnes against a really good team and an NCAA tournament Final Four, Elite Eight caliber team in Louisville. And haven't had a bunch of time now to sort of regroup. Now they're going to be without Cade Phillips the rest of the season. He's going to have shoulder surgery. So their front court depth takes a bit of a hit, but no, you got to find shooters. You got to close out on shooters. You better know where guys are. And Tennessee traditionally under Rick has done a really good job at that, has guarded the 3-point line. Tennessee didn't play. Everybody talks about what they didn't do well on offense in their last two games. I didn't think Tennessee played great defense, certainly in the second half against Kansas. And I can promise you, if Rick were on here, he'd tell you the same thing. Not the way that they have traditionally played defense. So they got to make some things happen and not put so much pressure on themselves in half-court sets, but they got to make some things happen more on defense, Bob, and generate some offense out of their defense, which when Tennessee's got it going, that's when they're at their best. And I know in a game like this at home, if you get the crowd behind you, you got a chance to do that. So I think those are the things, how they play at home against a quality team, what they do on defense to sort of help themselves on offense. And can Tennessee make shots? I mean, they have not been able to make shots in their losses when they needed to, in key situations. I'm not one of those who's ready to panic. I think this team's still learning to play with each other. They're all new. Amen's 18, 19 years old. He's going to get better. He's got a lot of skills. He's just got to get tougher and get better at finishing around the rim. But it's, you just got a lot of new players. And I think this team will get better. And it's good to play games like this going into the SEC because you sort of got to feel where you need to be or where you are and where you need to be.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. We on my radio show, we had assistant coach Greg Polinsky on this past week, and we talked a little about the Illinois game, particularly the second half, where it felt like Illinois was kind of getting whatever they wanted offensively, and it's so uncharacteristic for us to see that with Tennessee for the reasons you just said, CeeLo. It's defense is the calling card for a Rick Barnes team, and it just feels like they're not there. And Louisville's kind of this perfect storm. Their top three scorers are guards, Ryan Conwell, Isaac McNeely, and then this 5-star freshman, Mikel Brown, who is far more advanced right now than Nate Ament is. And that's not a criticism of Nate. It's just, again, it underscores how good this freshman class is across college basketball. But one of the things GP said was, and it is obvious, but you do have to reel it back in and remind yourselves of this. It's like that perimeter defense that is lacking right now. It's had mainstays for years, whether it was Josiah Jordan-James, whether it was Santiago Vescovi, and then last year, Zakai Ziegler, Jemai Mashak. All those guys had been around for 4 years. And so we got conditioned to be like, man, we're as good as a perimeter defensive team as there is in the country. And we're just not now. We're learning that as we go. So like you said, it's a work in progress, but this is going to be a test, man. Louisville goes 9 to 10 players deep, really, really good team. And I do think I wouldn't call this a must win for the reasons that some people would call it a must win, but it's 3-game losing streak. Like you said, Cade Phillips, that loss doesn't hurt us, in my opinion, as much offensively as it does defensively because he did have that ability to defend on the perimeter too. It's tougher when there's switches going on and you've got now like Felix Okpara and Jalen Carey. They're just not built the same way like Cade is for that defensive approach. So I think that's something to consider. But I do think this game is incredibly important from the perspective of it's not even about the tournament resume. Of course, that would help, but it's also we're heading closer and closer to SEC play. And after the Louisville game, there's 2 more bye games that are left for Tennessee. Currently, those 2 teams that they play, I think it's Gardner-Webb and maybe South Carolina State, they're winless combined. They haven't won a game. So those games are not going to be a good barometer. So then you're in SEC play. With our first game, we talked about this team a little earlier, at Arkansas. So I think it's important that we kind of get that losing streak, just kind of get it out of their headspace. That's the part I'm most concerned about. Get a get-right game for them mentally.
I'd like to see Tennessee make some more what I call tough twos. They got to make more shots in and around the basket. When they get a chance and get right at the basket or going through the glass, and not just Ament, but Okpara and any of the guys, that they need to make some of that. These types games, when you get the ball within 5 feet of the basket, you got to make some. And Tennessee's not been as good at that this year as they need to be. I remember talking to Rick in the preseason, and he said that was something, hey, we just got to be better at finishing those plays. And, you just can't rely on the three-pointer all the time. And when you've got even with Phillips going, I think this still is one of his better, if not his best front courts at Tennessee.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would include Ament in that front court, obviously, even though he plays out on the perimeter most of the time. I think in a game like this against guys who can shoot it the way Louisville shoots it, you got to get easier. When I say easier twos, you got to make baskets in closer to the rim. And a lot of times those are what I call tough twos. You got to absorb contact. You got to play through the contact. And I think you're going to see a lot of that in the SEC, a ton of that. And this is a game where, if you're going to sort of get ready for that, they're going to need to do that. But no, I agree. It's a big game, and it is a resume game. You've already lost 3. You've played 4 really good teams, 4 what I would call pretty good teams. You lost 3 of them.
Yeah.
This is a chance at home to sort of, in a way, you almost could steal 2 back, Bob, if you could beat a team like Louisville at home.
Yeah, and this would be one of those that, think about last season when we got blitzed by Kentucky up in Lexington. And I think maybe we lost to Auburn, and then we came back against Florida in Knoxville, the national champion Florida Gators. And we were missing Zakai and we were missing Igor Milicic. And I was like, oh boy, we're in trouble. And we won that game by nearly 20, as I recall. So just never know with Rick's teams, man. They might just drag Louisville into the mud. This would be one of those types of opportunities. And man, let's hope they do, because it's the SEC is a little weaker than it was last year, but which is an opportunity for Tennessee, but still going to be very, very tough.
Yeah, I never get too caught up on judging teams this early,
right,
in December, because a couple of his better teams, Rick's, I thought maybe played their best basketball earlier in the season, and not necessarily last year. So, if that reverses a little bit and they're playing a lot better, a lot more together, know each other, come late February, that's probably better. But you do need to start working toward playing more consistent basketball. That's the thing. Tennessee hasn't played. They haven't played what I would call consistently bad basketball, but they haven't been consistent. They played a good half and a bad half.
Yeah.
And Kansas is a great example of that. I thought Syracuse, they just didn't play a lot of times what I would call smart, decisive basketball. So I think more consistency across the board, shot selection, not losing guys on defense, those type things where I do think they'll get better. Those are the things, to me anyway, Bob, I look for in this game.
Definitely. Well, we have another one in the books, Chris. I guess we can maybe come back and do another one someday.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. We'll have to make Kevin Burnett a regular guest.
He was great, man. And special thanks to Kevin Burnett, VFL Kevin Burnett, for joining us today. And thank you all out there for watching and listening. As always, many thanks to our great sponsor as well, the Tate Insurance Group. Now, we'll be taking a little break for the holidays, but we'll be back soon, and we'll keep you posted on social media on our return and those plans. In the meantime, though, you should keep it locked in on Rocky Top Insider for the best Tennessee Vol coverage you're going to find anywhere. And one last reminder to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube, the Rocky Top Insider channel. Download our podcast wherever you listen to your pods. We're available. Appreciate you being a part of the show. As always, Chris, I hope you have a great holiday and get a little downtime with family and friends. And of course, I'm going to be looking forward to seeing you the next time we do this.
Yeah, we'll be diving into playoff football, Bob. It'll be that, and Christmas will be on my agenda over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But looking forward to catching up with you, my friend. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yes. Yep. Same to you. And to all of you out there, happy holidays. We'll see you again soon. And we look forward to joining you right here the next time we're back, probably after those holidays, on the RTI Lowdown.